welcome to the Unmuted Podcast, everybody. My name is Jeff Waldman. I'm the podcast host, also founder of ScaleHR. So this podcast is a relaunch podcast. We just brought it back, and we're talking all things HR, talent, and my love on HR tech. And so all of our guests are from around the world, but we do have a bit of a skew towards Canadian HR leaders, talent leaders, recruiters, practitioners, HR tech experts, and of course, thought leaders as well. And so we are publishing our episodes on a weekly basis. So we just launched our first one last week, and one will be dropping tomorrow, and then every Thursday morning until people get tired of it, and then they tell me to stop. So, but I'm not going to stop. So I'm going to keep going. This episode is actually pretty cool. It's a bit political. And so for those of you who know me, I never stray from a good fight or conversation when it comes to politics. So the topic here is navigating Ontario's new licensing rules, a deep dive for recruiters and agencies. So it's a hyper-focused one, and we've got two amazing guests that will be joining me today to talk about all of this craziness that's going on. But first, I just want to talk about the actual topic, and of course, I always do research and love doing research. And so, what this is Ontario, the government of Ontario, is looking at making some changes to the ESA, which stands for Employment Standards Act. And for those of you who don't know, each province in Canada has their own employment legislation, and the ESA is what governs all of Ontario's companies. And so tech companies, most companies are governed by this act. Now, what they're proposing is making changes to the ESA to require third-party temporary agencies and recruiters to be licensed. So that sounds odd, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. It appears that the main reason why that they're doing this is to prevent the exploitation of vulnerable foreign workers by recruiters. So it was difficult to really find data on how widespread this problem was or is. And of course, you always have a few bad apples in every profession. So usually government is in a reactive state, versus proactive state. And I think sometimes they maybe are well-intentioned, but not so sure how they actually roll things out and conceive new acts and laws. And so at its very crux, any third-party agency, recruitment agency, has to be licensed in this province in order to operate. Now, we're going to dive into all this because this is going to have a huge impact, for a lot of different organizations, not only for third-party vendors, but also for companies, working with these vendors. And so I'm joined today by Suky Sodhi and Jessica Smith. Both are business owners of their own staffing agencies, and I want to welcome both of you to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So thanks for being here. I know, without going on a tangent about politics and Canada, Ontario, the UK, on and on. I thought what we would do first, maybe just have each of you, very briefly, talk to us about what you do, your businesses, and maybe what niche that you might play in. So maybe Suky will start with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me firstly. I'm Suky Sodhi, founder at Professional Selection and Elite Global Recruiters. We actually, Professional Selection actually recruits for the recruitment industry, and Elite Global Recruiters trains the recruitment industry. So you can imagine how this is impacting all my clients. And we've been doing that since 2005. We recruit right across the UK, here in North America as well. So in a nutshell, that's us.
Great, thank you. And so where can people find you? I mean, obviously, we'll be sharing all of your links, URL, but maybe give us a bit of an overview.
So the two best ways to find me is LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm very, very active on that. And if you go to Facebook, Elite Global Recruiters Group, that is our
Okay.
Facebook group.
Perfect. Sounds good. Jessica, we've obviously known each other for a few years now. So maybe you just sort of tell our audience, what you do, your business, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, so I'm Jessica Smith. I'm the founder of Savant Recruitment. I've been in the industry for about 10 years, just over 10 years now. I know Suky actually because back in the day, she used to recruit my bosses at the staffing agencies that I used to work for.
Wow.
So through 6 degrees of separation, we became reunited for this cause. So I run my own. I run my own permanent staffing recruiting agency. Stress on the permanent here, not temp. But I'm running my own recruiting agency now, and I've been running it for the past 2 years. And we have this bill in front of us, and we're all collectively, coming together to try and fight it or get it reduced.
So you mentioned this bill. So, for those of you who don't know what a bill is a proposed piece of legislation that get put in front of Parliament. So Parliament means it's obviously based on the British system of politics and Parliament. Look, I'm not going to get into details, but anyway, the politicians at B are putting some stuff together on something that they perceive as a problem. So and their job is to supposedly come up with laws to sort of make things better for the people here in Ontario, if it's provincial or if it's a federal thing, but obviously across Canada. So this new legislation is happening that is basically targeting third-party staffing agencies and recruiters. So what is your understanding of why that this is being done? I mean, why is this happening? Is there a particular thing or event or series of issues that have given rise to this? Maybe Jessica, can start us off.
So I actually didn't know about Bill 27 until 2 months ago or 3 months ago. And I found out about it because I'm an industry vet as well. You'd think being in the industry for about 10 years, there would be rumblings about this. But there wasn't. And so Suky actually, I think she had made a post about the bill coming up. And so that's when I started kind of paying attention. I'm like, what is this bill? And diving deeper into it, Suky ended up hosting this webinar for a lot of the recruiting agencies right across Ontario. She brought 2 lawyers on the call to discuss. Everyone in this call was just, we basically were all like, what's going on? And so from my understanding, apparently this has been going on, or they've been working on this in the back end for the past 2 years to get this passed. The thing is, and I think this is really important to note, is I felt like when I found out about it 2 months ago, I'm like, why didn't I hear about this sooner? Why has this been going on for 2 years? Now a bill has just been passed, and now based on what the bill is basically stating, I have less than 6 months to get. Well, I have until January 1st to scrap around or to get 25 grand together to then just put into a letter of credit and go sit in my bank when I can use it for overhead. Yeah.
Right. So that is one issue that I want to part for now, but just talk about afterward. But Suky, is there anything that you want to add about to this? I mean, obviously you've been close to this for some time. Why is it happening? Like, why is
So, I mean, look, the bill is there to protect vulnerable workers, which, as an industry, wholeheartedly we support. Okay, so I want to be really clear on that.
Okay.
So just open the papers, right? It was the farm workers not, being exploited, not being paid, all of that stuff. So we 100% agree with that. The bill is there to protect them. However, how they've gone about it is they have just put this blanket ruling in and saying, if you are a third-party recruiter, you must be bad, therefore you have to comply here. So the bill is actually designed. So in simple layman's terms, if a temp is not paid by the agency, they can, obviously there's a process they got to go through, but immediately that 25 grand gets frozen and the temp's wages are paid out of that. I agree, they got to be paid. But what they've done is they've said, whether you're direct hire or temp, we don't care.
Oh,
So
I
the
see.
whole bill is there to ensure the vulnerable worker is protected, their rights, their pay, they get their money and things like that. Direct hire, we don't deal with any of that.
Okay, so that's a big separation here. For
Yep,
those people who don't know, that there are many staffing agencies out there, who hire temporary staff workers, temporary temps, basically as you would call it. And those people are paid through the staffing agency, right? The staffing agency bills the company, the client, for that
correct.
work. And so there's sort of an invoicing back end process. And so that's what they're really going after here, not say for example, Jessica worked doing, with a technology company, to hire a bunch of software devs. That direct hire. So the
Correct.
company will hire that person directly. Jessica, get paid for doing all of the amazing work to actually source, recruit, interview, like all of that stuff, deal making, and so on. So they're not going after those people, are they? Like this bill is not really for that because Jessica's not making any payment
Correct.
to these workers.
The fundamental reasoning of the bill is to ensure vulnerable workers are protected. They get their money, their
Yeah.
vacation, their source deductions are paid to the government and all of that stuff. We don't even touch any of that. We have
So why?
absolutely nothing
Okay.
to do with it.
So why are
Why are we
they?
covered in on it? Because of the
Yeah.
ignorance of the government, and they didn't do their homework to say, okay, this is a staffing industry, but within the staffing industry, what type of recruitment do we have?
Right.
Very
Right? They just
nuanced.
said, if you're a third-party recruiter, you must be bad. Therefore, we're going to get you to get a license.
So as you mentioned, obviously, like a lot of government type programs, the intent is there, but sometimes maybe how they
Yep.
go about sort of building a program or something like that may not be sort of in line with what they're trying to do. And so talking about something is obviously one thing, but then doing it is a completely different ballgame. So, all right, so there's that part of it. Now, is there anything else that is causing a problem with this legislation? So before I get into it, right? So you mentioned that it doesn't talk about. It focuses on the temporary, potentially vulnerable side of things. So the direct hire folks are looped into that arena. Now, obviously, if the actual bill itself and just the rules were such that it didn't really matter, then you probably wouldn't really care, right? But there's something else going on here, right? So there's
Yep.
obviously some stuff in the bill that's forcing you to do certain things that make
Absolutely.
zero sense. So
So
maybe
there's
talk about
the $25,000, which a lot of my clients can't afford. Let's park that one because I've got some
that. Okay.
further schools of thought. But in order to get your license, there's a number of criteria you have to meet. One of those ones as a direct hire, remember, direct hire, we have to prove WSIB compliance. We don't get involved with that. So how are we meant to do that? There's another piece, and forgive me, I forget the exact wording of it, is we have to prove that we have followed the Employment Standards Act. Well, we already abide by all of that. So some of that compliance, if I can use that word, just doesn't even apply to us. We do not,
How are you supposed to
again,
prove it to them
thank
if you
you.
don't do it?
Thank you. How do you do that? And then not only that, they're doing credit checks, right? And CRA checks and what have you. People are coming off the back of COVID, right? They're coming off the back of COVID. So I'm speaking to people that had a really bad time during COVID, yet they barely managed to keep their doors open. So therefore, their credit ratings, I'm assuming, going to have taken a bit of a knock, right? So
Pause right there. Sorry. So you talk about credit ratings of the actual
Credit score,
vendor,
yeah.
the third party. So do they have to meet a certain threshold, like 500, 600 or whatever? Or how does it work?
I don't know what that threshold is, to be
Okay.
honest.
So you have to have, as a company, as a whatever, it's a corporation. So the company have to have a certain credit score in order to be eligible.
Got to pass credit rating, yeah. And I don't know what that number is. Okay, so it's
So what
just
does that
crazy
have?
stuff. It's crazy stuff, right? That's my whole point. It was not thought through.
Okay. So this is why all of these things, recruiters across the province are, basically hitting the bell here, the alarm bell going, sort of hold on, hold on. So how is this going to impact your businesses? I mean, I know that, look, I can answer that question for you, but I'm not going to. Jessica, how is this going to impact you?
This is going to be really tough. So obviously starting a business on your own, I'm a bootstrapped business owner, right? So bootstrapped means you put all of the money that you've basically, accumulated over the course of your career, whatever you could save, put it back. It's not like I can go out and go get funding. Venture capital funding in Canada specifically is at the lowest it's ever been. We've had about 600 versus the States right now. So venture capital and private equity, I just received the data the other day, and so it stated that, and I get that the populations are different, but we're in the lowest VC funding term of our lives probably right now. But also, too, being in business for less than 2 years, it's not like the bank is going to give me a loan to go, cover this 25 grand. So VC and private equity, sorry, that's out for me. Going to get a loan from the bank, that's also out for me. So I'm like, what are my options? And when you're building a business on the back of one of the most challenging sales years, not only for my agency, but for numerous agencies across the board, on the back of COVID, everything I've had to do, I've had to repivot my agency this year as well, my business. I know that so many other businesses, that have been around longer than me, they've also had to repivot this year. So to say that this is the worst time possible that this could happen would be an understatement. And it would really affect my business. I think, putting 25 grand away plus the fees into I'm not against going to get a license. I'll be licensed. That's no issue. It's the fact that the issue that I have is, okay, now I have to scrounge together 25 grand. I have less than 6 months to do it, right? So I have to figure out where I'm going to get this money on a very hard sales year, paying the bills, all that stuff, being a bootstrapped business owner. So that's really rough. But then understanding that this 25 grand is just going to go sit in the bank to do what?
So that was my question. Like, is it supposed to be just in your bank account, just collecting dust? What's the point of that? I mean, you can't even invest that money somewhere.
Right. I need it to run my business. I've invested in numerous tools for my business, a lot of artificial intelligence. I'm trying to build the agency of the future here right now. And so, these tools add up. They're really expensive. And if I have 25 grand sitting in the bank, I can't use that towards building my business, which is what I need.
So obviously, this is a huge problem for sort of smaller companies, smaller businesses. I mean, obviously, the big guys, this is sort of a drop in the bucket for them. And I think they're not even flinching probably. So this really has a large impact on the small mid-sized marketplace, which is really unfortunate. So, Suky, you've been very active, obviously, in dealing with this. So what have you done so far in terms of trying to deal with this, combat this? Like, walk us through that.
I just want to back up a quick second on the impact it's had. Remember, all my clients are staffing agencies. Okay, so the personal impact it has on my business, whatever happens impacts my clients, impacts my business. I have clients or agencies reaching out to me saying we have to close our doors in January because we cannot afford this license. Okay, and they're direct hire. Now, you got to remember, Ontario is the largest hub So if you can't run your business in Ontario, you're buggered, right? So I've had people that have said, no, we can't hire. We cannot hire people because we got to find this. We don't have the money, so we can either invest there or there. So that's having a direct impact. Agencies are going to let people go, okay, in order to put this money together. That's going to impact everybody, right? So I think there's a bigger impact outside of just the dollars and cents immediately, right? But the other point I want to make on here as well, if we have this legislation come in, well, it is coming in as we sit in the here and now. So that means agencies in the US, for example, which is, by the way, the world's largest staffing spend, is something like 180, $90 billion. We're now saying to them, if you want to make a placement in Ontario, you have to have this license. It's the largest economy. What are they going to do to us? They're going to make it even harder for us as Canadian companies to work in the US. So I think that is something that I really want to point out. And to tag on to Jessica's point about the $25,000, I'm a perm agency, not a temp agency, as is Jessica. So I'm giving $25,000 to TD Bank in the or whichever your bank is. They're charging me 2.5% fee every year to administer the letter. So I'm paying $600, roughly speaking, depending on where you are, to get this letter over and above the fee. My 25 grand is going to then be used by the bank to finance someone's mortgage. So the only person making money in that transaction, not making money, beg your pardon, is us. Right. So I think there's some of the things we really got to be thinking about. But sorry, I digress to go back to your question. Well, we had, as Jessica was saying, I set up the webinar. We had over 276 people register for it. And to Jessica's point, people weren't aware of it. So back up.
Pause you. Did you actually record it?
I messed up the recording.
Okay.
Yes, I've got bits and pieces of it. I know.
Gonna share it and blast it and leverage my big, massive network.
Oh my God.
No problem. Don't worry about it.
Honestly, it's choppy. So my girl's trying to,
Don't worry about it. All good. Okay, so carry on. All
good. We had 276 people, but back in April, I held my first Canadian Staffing Industry Summit in Toronto. I had a legal Pace law firm there do a session on this. There are 180 people in the room. Maybe 4, 5, let's be generous, 10 people said they were aware of something coming down the line. Just to give you an idea of how, quote unquote, secretively this was done. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we have since done, Jessica, myself, and others, we've spoken to the Globe and Mail. So Globe and Mail picked up the article. We've been reaching out to Ministry of Labour, pretty much hitting a brick wall, not really getting much response or nothing that we can use that can move the needle forward. Spoken with CTV, done Jessica and I and another lady, we recorded a segment for them. Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, about 3 weeks ago?
Yes.
Yeah, still not aired because they've been trying to get comments from the Ministry of Labour, and Ministry of Labour is saying, oh, we're looking into this. Right. So
which is code for whatever. Anyway,
please bury this. Right. We have spoken or made many attempts to get hold of Doug Ford. Made many attempts. A couple of people actually got through, and it was one of those ones. I want to talk to you. I wasn't aware of this. I support small businesses. And I'm paraphrasing there. So we've been pretty active in trying to get our voice heard, but it's some reason they're not even open to hearing us out, if I'm being brutally honest.
So what are you hoping to achieve? I mean, what are you trying to do? I mean, say you pick up the phone and you call Doug Ford and then he talks to you. And what are you hoping to do?
Okay, so from my perspective, I'm all for the bill. We have to protect vulnerable employees, right? I get it totally. We have to protect them. So I get all of that. If I got a couple of wishes, right? The 25 grand. Why do we have to give you 25 grand? The other provinces have a surety bond. Okay, turn it into a surety bond if you must have it for everybody. Okay, so that's one point. But honestly, it does. Why are you making perm agencies, direct hire agencies, search firms even be part of this? Okay, so that would be the other part of it. But you know what? Talk to us. We will come. I'll follow the law, right? I'll do it. That, and I'm not saying anybody that should say, well, I'm not going to comply and they can come after me. That we're definitely not advocating for that. But what we really want is for them to talk to us and say, okay, let's turn this into a surety bond if you have to have it, because that's how all the other provinces do it. Okay,
Right. Okay.
That's how they all do it. But let's look at it. Who actually handles payroll for these workers? It's the temp agencies, not the direct
Do you
hire.
think it may be a function of they just don't really understand
Correct. But what I
how
need
this
to
all
add,
works?
and don't quote me on this, but if you are a HR consultant, a third-party HR consultant, okay, and you're contracted to a company and you're doing HR services, and you're also doing their hiring for them and they're paying you an invoice for the hire, this legislation applies to you as well.
That actually makes sense. I mean, obviously, if
Yeah,
you're
people look at
dealing
it and say it's
with
just
hiring,
staffing agencies, right? Technically,
yeah,
it's not. If you actually read it, it's anybody that is being paid a fee. Um,
yeah.
So yes, so I don't know if Jessica's got anything else to add to that.
I think this whole entire year, so I've been speaking with my sales coach, and one of the sentiments that he does say sometimes is, a lot of businesses aren't incentivized to do business in Canada. And I think that's a really important point to bring up here, because with this bill passing, who knows how incentivized they're going to be. They're probably not going to be to even want to touch us. And Canada already has enough problems. We don't need to continuously add more to that, especially because we need to do that business within the US. We need the business here, of course, but when it comes to how we do business, it's been broken. And so we need to work on repairing that. And with this bill, it's just going to continue to add more to this problem.
That's a very good point. I mean, because I was actually wondering, I wasn't quite sure. I think you clarified it. Is if you're a company that's, say, based in Vancouver, you're a staffing agency, right? And you've done business, for the last whatever number of years in BC, Alberta, wherever, and you want to make a placement in Ontario, even though you don't have any boots on the ground, you have to be licensed in order to do that job, basically. Okay. So that's really critical. So some people may be asking, well, I'll just move my operation from, say, Toronto to, Quebec City or Calgary, right? But that's not going to solve your problem if you continue doing business here. And so my fear for this whole thing is if you keep putting up more and more roadblocks, it's going to really be difficult for small businesses like yours to, continue to thrive. And B, it's going to significantly increase prices. Economics always wins. Supply and demand. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So this all has to be done by January 1st. Now, what if you don't? What if you say, you know what, that's not enough time. I don't have enough time to comply with those rules, or I can't. What could happen to you?
Heavy fines. So what they're pretty much saying is
Anytime.
you must have your application in by December 31st, whether you get it approved or not.
It's application.
Yeah. So you must apply. So you've
Okay.
got to give them your 25 grand and meet all the criteria. So by December 31st. They may take 6 months to approve you, right? That's
Well,
okay
yeah.
as long as you're in the process. Okay. So strictly speaking, January the 1st, if you are making a placement in Ontario, regardless of where you are based, you are breaking the law. Okay. So you will be, and there's a, depending on what you do, the fine just grows and grows. And they actually have a clause in there that says they can decide to take your license away. Okay. They don't clarify. That's it.
Well,
Yeah.
no
That's it.
due process.
Well, they think there'll be a process, but they have the power to literally just say, okay, done, we're taking your license away from you. Yes, there's a process to reapply. But I think the other piece we should really mention here is just on the back of Jessica's. Where's the entrepreneurship? Okay, so think about it. Where is that next entrepreneur coming from? Because I tell you right now, I wouldn't be in Ontario. I'd be like, forget that, right? I'm going to go and do over here. So we're killing that entrepreneurial spirit as well. We're just making it harder and harder for people to do that. But the other point is really important. During COVID, the SUB, right? So the emergency fund, that money is due back December 31st. Okay.
Right.
So people are aware of that. So hopefully everybody's saved and they've got that money. A lot of people have struggled, but they've pulled that money together. We've now increased that by 25 grand.
That is a very good point. And I can probably say that a lot of the organizations that took on that money, most of the ones, that I know, do not have that money saved because they've gone through a really horrible year. I told people, if you can scrape through and not take it, do that, because it's really much more difficult to sort of deal with it after the fact. But having said that, I think this is a really good lesson for all things when it comes to the balance of regulation, versus business, right? So there's a fine balance here. If you go too far on the regulation side, then you stifle the business side of it. If you go too far on the business side of it, theoretically, then you stifle some of the compliance and regulation side of things. And so I've always been a proponent that it needs to be smart. It needs to evolve with the times of technology and so on. And so I sincerely hope that something will change here, that the government will, realize or will have a willingness to even sort of look at this in terms of making some changes to it. So what can other recruiters, talent professionals, HR leaders, professionals do to support your efforts? Is there somewhere that they can go to, to express themselves or share? I don't know. Is there a central place?
Jessica, do you want to grab that one?
We do have a group on LinkedIn called Recruiters for Fair Licensing, which is, where the majority of us have kind of all grouped together. But Suky also does run a Facebook group as well. So she's been making announcements as well. And her Facebook group is definitely something that I think everyone would want to check out. We're still continuing to make efforts on the back end. We're having meetings and whatnot to discuss what the next steps are, what's going to be most impactful. But if you want to get involved, just follow any of us, and then we'll lead you down the right path. Whether it's
the petition,
and the petition as well. Yeah, so we do have a petition going as well. So anything, just get in touch with us, and we'll get you involved.
Okay, so I will grab those links up from you both, and I'll make sure that they're shared properly sort of via the podcast episode and so on. So basically, what you're trying to do is get the attention and also some time with the appropriate people in government, obviously, to have, at least at a starting point, to have a conversation about this. And so, are you aware of other groups also doing this too, or is it pretty much strictly on your shoulders?
I feel like it's been on our shoulders mainly, really and truly. Suky was the one that did come out with that. I didn't know about the information until she came out, and then we heard about the Recruiters for Fair licensing group, and then we kind of just all huddled together.
Okay.
And that was it. And yeah, we're just powering through right now.
I think
Okay.
also it's one of those
good.
ones where people were caught off guard and that shell shock, and there was so much misinterpretation as well. Right? As in, well, I'm a direct hire. This is to protect vulnerable workers, make sure they get their money. Therefore, it doesn't apply to us, right? So I think there was all of that that's going through it. But we need to make our voice heard. Okay, they got to come to the table and talk to us because, as I said, they reckon they consulted. They done the proper consultation with the industry and everything like that. I don't know anyone that was consulted.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, obviously, as part of our processes here in Canada, when you do go through, this process, the government is supposed to, consult with stakeholders. And stakeholders is a very broad term, but it basically means in this context, with recruiters, third-party agencies, who would have a vested personal interest in this. And, this is dealing, with your livelihoods here. This is not a game. And, I first started my career in government. I've worked a lot with, government organizations over the years. And, it's really easy to sit somewhere and to, conceive a new idea and just kind of go with it, but not having a true understanding of what it's going to do when it comes to, being law. And I really hope, for your sake, that you'll get that time with them. I've been a huge supporter of this industry. I've worked in it, obviously being in HR. And I think it's really important as Canadians that we get this opportunity. So is there one thing that maybe haven't touched on that you think might be important to mention on this topic? Suky, Jessica?
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where they're trying to, in their mind, right or wrong. Okay?
Right.
Why don't you go after some of those companies that are using these individuals? Because obviously the workers are reporting that they're not being paid. So the worker is telling you which company they were working at and which agency that was through. Why are they not going after them? This problem could be drastically reduced and solved. I'm not saying overnight, right? Without the other legit agencies paying the price and in some cases losing their livelihood. So go after them, right?
I totally agree with you on this. Usually when government sort of comes out with new laws, it's because something happened. So something or things have transpired. Now, if you take a look at every piece of legislation ever conceived and rolled out, I think it might be safe to say that a lot of it has to do with a small percentage of the
Yep.
population that may
One
have
bad
done
apple.
A, B, or C.
Yep.
Bad apple, right? And so this was actually mentioned. I was reading the actual articles about this new bill, is that they are trying to deal with those who are actually violating people's rights and taking advantage of both populations. And that's fine. But we have a criminal code. We've got legislation here that deals
Exactly.
with things that are against the law. So it does say that people have a right to be paid for the work done. So that doesn't change. So why not just have a process that makes it easier for those people who are marginalized to make a claim to the government, fast track, names, everything, boom, to the police, and then actually do something about it. So to me, that seems logical. And it's the same thing with, HR, anything in life. So anyway,
Well, think about it. When
I
has
agree
a
with you on that.
criminal changed the way they do things? Because now there's a license here. I better stop
Right.
doing. They know they are committing a crime. The companies they're working for, where the temps are, they know they're committing a crime. They're
Of
breaking
course.
a law. Let's follow through on that law instead of creating another law. Doesn't make sense to me.
Or just changing something to
Yeah.
make to make it harder for other people. And I understand what they're trying to do is deter. But I mean, look, I mean, it's the same thing with, I'm going off tangent here, but I'm going to mention it. It's the same thing with, gun laws. So, you create gun legislation, but the bad criminals who use guns aren't going to change their behavior, right? So nothing changes. So
we'd have no drug trade if that was the case, right? Oops, it's illegal now. I better not do it. No, they just go underground and find another way.
Jessica, is there a last parting thought or something that haven't thought about?
Due diligence. Where was it? Seriously, because again, I've been in this industry for years, and I just feel like how this got passed, it wasn't well thought out. And with the industry being as nuanced as it is, and there are, companies that are making claims that they represent the industry as a whole, again, I found out about this last minute. This is nuanced. And if this company is making a claim that they represent the entire industry, make sure that you have all your bases covered and that you are educating the government on the nuances of what each, staffing firm, recruiting agency does. And so I just feel like that wasn't even considered. The bill was passed, and it is what it is. And now we have to go in and try and get the government to basically sit down with us so that we can educate them on the nuances, or else we're going to go out of business. So that's it.
So I want to thank you both for spending time with me. I mean, obviously my goal here is to amplify your voice in the hopes that, that you can get somewhere with the government here in Ontario. Obviously anybody else who was watching this an episode either on my YouTube channel or via my website, contact them. All of their contact information and links will be in the episode summary. So, this is really unfortunate. I mean, obviously, I hope that this gets resolved and, for the betterment of, small, mid-sized third-party agencies and vendors. So, I guess all you can do is just keep pressing and keep trying. So I want to thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.